Hello, I am Jackson from Inside America channel. Welcome.
Alright, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the most intensely scrutinized events of the 2026 Iran war, the February 28th strike on the Minab Elementary School. Now, if you operate in the defense and intelligence space, you know that deconstructing a catastrophic failure is just as crucial as analyzing a tactical win. So we're going to do a clinical, chronological breakdown of the intelligence and operational breakdowns that led to this tragedy. We'll strip this event down layer by layer, going from the physical impact on the ground right back up the kill chain. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the timeline, examine the forensic debris, dive into the intelligence and mapping failures, and look at the role of AI targeting. Finally, we'll weigh precision against civilian impact and discuss the broader implications for institutional trust. Let's jump straight into Section 1, the Minab strike timeline. To really grasp how this disaster unfolded, we have to look at the incredibly tight timeline on the morning of February 28th. Now remember, the work week in Iran begins on Saturday, so kids were already in class. At 9:40 a.m., tensions are boiling over, and Iranian authorities order schools to close. But just 20 minutes later, at 10 a.m., the U.S. and Israel kick off Operation Epic Fury. And then, at exactly 10:23 a.m., the Shajrat Tayyaba school in southern Iran is struck. That window between the closure order and the actual strike was so severely compressed, it meant parents literally didn't have the time to evacuate their kids before the munitions hit. The immediate battle damage assessment, just staggering. This wasn't a single hit. Medics and officials described it as a triple-tap missile strike. The structural damage was total. The roof of the two-story building collapsed, completely blowing out the walls. And the human toll was catastrophic. We're talking 156 civilians killed. That includes 120 schoolchildren, plus teachers and parents who had just rushed over to pick up their kids. Of course, in the immediate aftermath, you have the fog of war. Competing narratives everywhere, making it really difficult to see who was actually responsible for pulling the trigger. Which really brings us to the core question of this explainer. How exactly does a highly advanced, precision-guided munition end up hitting a brightly painted civilian elementary school? Well, to figure that out, we've got to look at the physical evidence. That brings us to Section 2, forensic evidence and debris. So, open source intelligence, OSINT, quickly cut right through the noise here. Independent analysts from Bellingcat, Amnesty, and CNN stepped in, geolocating footage and analyzing the wreckage. And what they found was definitive. The debris on site perfectly matched a BGM or UGM-109 Tomahawk land attack missile. Interestingly enough, investigators even found UK-linked components mixed in with the shattered fragments. But the absolute crucial takeaway here, the Tomahawk is exclusive to US forces in this specific conflict. Neither Iran nor Israel operates that system. Now, those same OSINT analysts also had to rapidly debunk some early social media disinformation. There were claims circulating that an Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Corps missile had misfired and hit the school. But it turns out the photographic evidence supposedly proving this, it was geolocated to the city of Zanjan. That's a staggering 1,600 kilometers away from Minab. So the forensic data really only pointed in one direction. Moving right along to Section 3, intelligence and mapping failures. This is where we find the fatal flaw in the targeting package. It all comes down to the evolution of satellite mapping data. Look at this comparison. Back in 2013, the building housing the school was actually integrated inside the adjacent IRSC Navy military compound. So at that time, it was a valid military target. But fast forward to 2016, and satellite imagery paints a completely different picture. The school had been physically walled off from the military base. It had separate civilian entrances, brightly painted murals, and absolutely zero military security checkpoints. And this checks out internally, too. A preliminary internal Pentagon administrative probe, what the military calls a 15-6, indicated that U.S. Central Commands had relied on outdated coordinates provided by the Defense Intelligence Agency. Essentially, the targeting system was looking at a map that was a full decade out of date. It completely mistook a vibrant civilian school for an active military facility. Okay, let's turn to Section 4, the role of AI targeting. 13,000. Think about that number for a second. That is the massive volume of targets the U.S. military processed and struck in just the first 38 days of Operation Epic Fury. To manage a scale like that, the Pentagon leaned heavily on an AI-powered data fusion program called the Maven Smart System. This thing is capable of churning out thousands of target packages an hour. But here's the catch. That extreme speed introduces a really critical vulnerability. It's known as automation bias. Essentially, this is the human tendency to rely so heavily on automated systems that operators simply fail to adequately double-check the machine's recommendations. I mean, when you're compressing the vetting window down to mere minutes, meaningful human oversight basically evaporates. Let's break down the exact steps of this AI-compressed kill chain, because it really illustrates the problem. Step 1. The AI system ingests that flawed, outdated 2013 DIA map data. Step 2. The Maven Smart System rapidly spits out target packages for the opening salvo of the war. Step 3. Human operators who are completely overwhelmed by the volume of data and looking at severely compressed review windows succumb to automation bias. And finally, Step 4. Those outdated coordinates completely bypass proper scrutiny, the target is approved, and the missile flies. So the AI pipeline didn't create the bad intelligence, but it absolutely accelerated its deployment. Which leads us to Section 5, Precision versus Civilian Impact. This whole failure is really best encapsulated by a stark dichotomy. On one side, you have a weapon system of unparalleled capability, the precision-guided Tomahawk cruise missile. But on the other side, it's being guided by intelligence that's over a decade old. The result on the ground isn't precision warfare, it's 156 civilians killed in a clearly marked, walled-off elementary school. It is literally a case of a devastatingly low-tech failure dictating the path of a high-tech weapon. To put this into professional context for you, listen to this quote from Wes Bryant. He's the former Pentagon Chief of Civilian Harm Assessment. He stated, "That was pure recklessness, pure negligence. We are seeing a complete disregard for standing operational practices." Bryant, who, by the way, is a former special ops targeting specialist, pointed out that this strike represents a severe devolution of standards. He highlighted that the Pentagon's Civilian Protection Center of Excellence was actually dismantled right before this conflict began. All right, let's wrap up with Section 6, Implications for Institutional Trust. As you might expect, the policy fallout from the Minov strike has been massive. Here in the U.S., 46 senators signed a letter demanding real answers about AI usage, how targets are vetted, and pushing for the establishment of strict no-strike lists. On the international stage, there's intense scrutiny over whether this complied with international humanitarian law. In fact, the UN has already initiated an investigation to figure out if this level of negligence actually crosses the threshold into a war crime under the Rome Statute. Meanwhile, the domestic response has been notably fractured, and that has immediate implications for executive transparency. Look at the split here. The Department of Defense, through Secretary Hegseth, acknowledged their internal probe and promised a thorough investigation, maintaining that the U.S. never deliberately targets civilians. But the executive branch took a totally different stance. President Trump denied knowledge of the Pentagon's preliminary findings and publicly claimed, without providing evidence, that Iranian munitions were actually responsible for the blast. So that leaves us with a final, vital question to ponder. In an era of AI-compressed kill chains, where automated systems are dictating the literal pace of war, how can militaries ensure that the precision of their intelligence actually matches the precision of their weapons? Because as the Minab strike tragically proves, a smart bomb is really only as smart as the map it's given. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the data, and we'll see you next time.